Hey guys, Chicky Domain, Deboo.com with a Deboo.com forecast update. This forecast update effective around 9:15 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Saturday, September 9th, 2017. And so keep in mind, when you first view this video, I started recording at 9:15. I don't know how long it's going to take for it to upload to YouTube. So keep in mind that you may be looking at old stuff by the time you look at this. So we're going to start you off with the National Hurricane Center's 8 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time immediate advisory on Hurricane Irma. Irma did lose some intensity last night. Maximum sustained winds are now 130 miles per hour with the interaction of Cuba. I'm sorry I've not been able to get back to your questions and comments on, what type of effect that all of that is. We're fixing to show it to you guys because although it did weaken, Irma is getting ready to move into a position where re-intensification is likely before landfall along the southwest Florida coast. So here's the National Hurricane Center's forecast map showing Irma moving away from the coast of Cuba in towards the Florida Straits. Now, the trend has been over the last 3 cycles, 4 cycles, whatever it's been, has been to the west. And that's why we have picked out that 85 long line. For those of you who've been following along, that's what that is. And if you'll notice up in here towards Panama City, which we pointed that out, that's why we picked that 85 long line. We now have hurricane watches in effect for areas right past Panama City. So if you saw our last video update and we talked about the cone of uncertainty and how there's a reason for that and how that within this cone of uncertainty, although the National Hurricane Center is very specific where they put their little letters here, that doesn't mean that inside of that cone, that letter can't move around. And even though the trend has been off towards the west, we have a split overnight between GFS and Euro. Euro is now showing a possible coastal runner up the Florida west coast in the Gulf of Mexico. The GFS is showing the center up in here on 9/11, right in here. Now, why is this important? Some of you saw our post that this could likely lead to some more re-intensification once over Florida, and that Irma was going to go against conventional wisdom. And that is, think about this, how wide the center of Irma has been in those hurricane force winds, right? Well, at this position, this becomes the skinniest part of the state. So any movement closer to the Gulf Coast or any movement over towards the East Coast, because the cone of uncertainty goes over here, allows Irma to get closer to warmer water. The other factor involved here is the fact that Irma, because of her large overall footprint, her spiraling arms are going to be over the Gulf of Mexico and over the Atlantic. Folks, in about 24 to 48 hours, we're not going to be able to see the state of Florida looking at satellite imagery. Okay? So for those who think that maybe Irma has fallen apart overnight or she's weakened up a bit, that is true. But again, re-intensification is likely as she starts to move towards the Florida Straits and that little pocket that we pointed out in our last video update just on the other side of the Keys. Now, for those who hadn't seen our other video, we talked about that there was nothing to say when we were looking at the cone of uncertainty that Irma can't get just a little bit more west-northwest. In fact, we use that exact same voice inflection. Okay, now, so we're already seeing I don't see the GFS this morning. Okay, I don't see the Euro this morning. I do see the GFS trying to verify, but that doesn't mean that the Euro won't verify. And I say this because some of you have saw our post where Irma is a big girl, and sometimes big girls do what they want. Now, also last night I posted on Twitter, we had a little Twitter storm last night, and I told you it's not about the direction that Irma is traveling, it's where she wants to go. But I can't tell you if she'll get there. And that is that Irma really wants to go here. But the upper level wind pattern, like this, we talked about flow in the last video. You got to understand flow. The upper level wind pattern wants to do this to her. But in our Twitter storm, again, going back to that 85 line, we talked about that this is where the front is trying to pinch off. Guess what? Do you see any clouds here? The tail end of the front is trying to pinch off here. That's where the natural progression goes. So if Irma moves off like this and wants to go to the tail end of the front, that's what's going to happen. She's going to move towards the west-northwest in here and then finally meet that point right in here. Now, there's some uncertainty from this point. The models have been really consistent, again, on 911, being right here. But the trend out of the National Hurricane Center over the last 2 or 3 cycles shows a left hook. It's not as sharp today as it was yesterday. It's kind of small, and then showing a tropical storm up in here in Georgia, and then a tropical depression in here. And so, but the natural flow of things is for once Irma got into here, is to hook off towards the northeast, because the natural progression of things is another front coming in and then sweeping Irma out to sea. This goes against conventional wisdom in here. And so if you saw our post, we talked about conventional wisdom, that Irma would go against it. And here's why. And so we have to go back, and we have to go back into the history over the last 2 weeks of how this set up. Now you're looking at 3 hurricanes. And no, this is not the first time that this has happened. We pointed that out in our last video update. Brian McNulty pointed it out. We had already thought about it, didn't know what year it was, and luckily, when I clicked on Twitter, Brian McNulty's tweet was sitting right in front of me. And so in 2010, we saw the same thing with the same lettered storms. And during that time, I picked up on what was really quite unusual, and it was the interaction and the playing off one another. I mean, think about how unique this pattern and setup is. We've got 3 hurricanes. There were 2 majors, Jose, Irma, and Katia. Katia is now out of the picture. Guys, this picture is from yesterday. It's a high-resolution image from yesterday. And we already knew that Katia was forecast to dip towards the southwest. Well, guess what? When we say that the systems were operating in tandem, Katia dipped to the southwest, Irma dipped to the southwest and made landfall on the Cuban coast, and Jose also wanted to dip southwest. And so that is an amazing part of the overall pattern. And so while you're mesmerized by looking at the eye of Irma, you're not paying attention to everything that surrounds her. And everything that surrounds her plays an important role in what the eventual outcome may be. Now let's go back to Jose, because this is not a real time. In real time, thank God, if there was one positive of Irma, Irma created upwelling, and Jose looks a lot weaker overnight. Just like Irma kind of looks weaker overnight, and we now have Katia has moved in on shore, and we know that's going to weaken, right guys? Okay, so yesterday, on the dip from Jose, the reason why the National Hurricane Hunters reported that the position when they were investigating, they found that was more south and west than initially anticipated, and that is because Jose wanted to go here. And that's been the forecast. But when this developed, and because it was in the draft of Irma, it's trying to bring it here, even though conventional wisdom says here. That's why the National Hurricane Center has that track of a west-northwest lift in here. But then there was that time when Jose was stuck at the 17 line, and we just saw Irma at the 17 line, which the upwelling that Irma caused has caused Jose to weaken overnight. So it is odd, or not necessarily odd, but it's the same type pattern that we had in 2010 with 3 hurricanes interacting with each other. So let me zoom this out real quick, because here's the other big factor. And the other big factor is, we talked about that low that was sitting over the Great Lakes region. And so when we talk about flow and that low was drawing down cold Canadian air behind it, along back behind this front. 2 or 3 days ago, it was 55 degrees in Atlanta. And the old rule of thumb is that when hot meets cold, Irma being hot, and it's cold on the other side, when hot meets cold, it creates spin. And the effect of that is, with the two combined, and I'm not trying to freak anybody out here, so please don't take it at that. But when we saw Hurricane Sandy were the right elements coming together at the right time, folks. And so when we talk about Irma getting in here to the skinny part of the state, and we talk about the cold air meeting the hot air, this will likely lead to a period where Irma can get a chance at more expansiveness. Okay, so it may not be exactly that she re-intensifies in your mind thinking Category 4, Category 5. We're talking about expansiveness. And when we talk about expansiveness, we're talking about a wider, larger wind field of tropical storm force winds over a wide of area. Folks, have no doubt that Irma is going to cause loss of life, be it from a tree falling on someone's house, be it from someone who didn't turn around and drowned, be it from someone who didn't heed the advice of the National Hurricane Center. If you're north of Central Florida, and I can't tell you whether or not to leave or stay or go. Stop sending me questions like that, guys. Do you realize how bad it would be if I said go and then something bad happened? It would be on my head. Make your own decisions, folks. But if you're north of Central Florida, it's still not too late to get out. But I would say you better look at the interstate. The last thing that you want to do is get stuck on the interstate in your car with Irma coming over the top of you. Keep that in mind. Now let me switch you over to last night's run of the models. This is the Euro. And you're going to have to bear with me here so I can zoom. And I'm going to have to zoom out and zoom in. This is the Euro coming up. And from this position here, this is the Euro showing a landfall right in here. This is further west and north. The west-northwest trend continues with the Euro. And the Euro shows it lifting straight up through here. And notice how black everything is. You know, we always, I don't want to say it's a joke, but we say we're a descendant of ancient rainbow warriors. And we believe in signs. My father was a Pacific Islander. And when we see black, we see darkness. When we see darkness, we see a loss of electricity. There's going to be lots of people without electricity. And it's going to take time, folks, for the emergency responders, for all of those hard-working people that are working hard to make your life better after this event. It's going to take them time to get into Florida. There's going to be trees across the roads, blah, blah, blah. I don't need to go through that drill with you. It's just what's going to happen. This is the GFS. Again, excuse me, I'm going to have to zoom in and zoom out. And one thing that struck me when I saw this morning, out of all of the years, and I'm talking about years, of repetitive observation, I never went to college for the study of meteorology. Just let that be clear. Out of all the years of repetitive observation, I've never seen a pink circle in a run of a GFS. What does it mean? I have no clue. I really don't. And to me, at this particular point, it does not matter. So, But again, there's that black. Now, we talked about the exact timing of when this video was recorded. Now, I got to zoom out here, guys, a little bit. And so this is what I saw at 9:15, okay? And so by the time you're viewing this, I don't know, it might be 9:30, might be 10 o'clock, it could be 10:30, depending on how many people are on the internet. But I just showed you where the GFS was. We always look ahead of whatever feature we're watching and compare it to what the models are. And let me make this perfectly clear. I don't look at models first. I look at imagery first to see if I can pick out anything that may be unusual. Then I go try and find it in the model. For those of you who just sit behind a computer and look at model run after model run after model run, you're doing yourself a disservice. If you want to learn how things work, watch continuous loops. Watch and do it with repetitive observation, and sooner or later it will become second nature to you. But I want you to look right here over Central Florida, and you can see how it appears that there's a circular shape. I know the flow is like this. Okay, I don't even have to put it in loops anymore. I can look at a single image and tell you what's happening in that image. And guys, this is a bad omen because we already know what the GFS shows. And we already know what the Euro shows. And it's inside of 72 hours, and we know that the models are not going to be that far off from real time. So when I saw this morning, I said, whoop, there it is. And for those of you who saw, it's been 3 days ago now, and this is in the almost exact position that I superimposed Irma over the state of Florida. Now, most of you, and I understand your point, I really do. I understand that that image at that time was Irma as a Category 5. I am not suggesting, and was not then, that a Category 5 hurricane was going to be over the state of Florida. But as we already talked about in the skinny part of the state, and as we already talked about within that cone of uncertainty, the cone of uncertainty is over here, the cone of uncertainty is over here, you know that the Euro shows over here, and you know that the GFS actually trended a little bit further east over here. Where that eye actually sets up in here can have a big different outcome on what's fixing to unfold in real time, guys. Let me switch you to this image over here. This is the visible of this morning, of the same infrared that you saw there. So the differences between, and by the way, there are differences when you're looking at water vapor imagery, infrared imagery. There's different colors and screens that you can apply to get a better idea of what you're looking at. But let's go to the visible, because I can't rule this out. Okay, I just want everybody to know I can't rule this out, and I hope it doesn't happen. But look, notice how there's a circular shape right here? Notice how I told you that she wanted to go here? I can't say that she can't come up here and continue on to the west-northwest movement, because the upper level pattern in here is not enough, or is not strong enough to grab her to pull her all the way up north. Switch you over to here and give you the wider view now, okay? And this will give you the little bit different look of Jose. So this is real-time visible satellite imagery, guys, of this morning. And here's Jose. And let me zoom into Jose real quick so I can take my mind off Irma before I switch back to her. Thank God for upwelling, because followers in Puerto Rico, you know I told you yesterday that you weren't out of the woods. It looks like you're out of the woods this morning. Virgin Island followers, you've suffered enough. I hope the good Lord has blessed you, and I hope you have plenty of time for recovery. Our thoughts and prayers are with you. Here's the point where Irma may have the chance to re-intensify, and that looks like it's going to verify. And I also wanted to give you another shot of why everything east of the 85 line is still in play. And that is, here's the eye of Irma. And we know that she's moving off towards the west-northwest. Common knowledge, we all know the National Hurricane Center already shows it moving here. And that means that she gets the chance to be back over more acreage of open water. But I want you to notice over the Yucatan Channel, and I have seen this before, and that is that anytime you get drafting over the Yucatan Channel, you know, for us, our followers from the beginning of the year, you know, we've talked about an area of spin over the Gulf of Honduras. You have to watch. This is another part of watching everything instead of being mesmerized about where the eye is. I can't stress how important it is to stop looking at the eye. There's a reason why the eye stares at you, because it wants to take your focus off what's happening. But if you look right here, just like we pointed out over here, the similarities between this and the similarities between this, and because of the location of where it is, I can't say that Irma won't come in here and move up into here. Okay, I know that sounds crazy, guys. I mean, what is the best solution? The best solution is for the state of Florida to bite the bullet, because God forbid she get over here. That's all I got for you for now. I will do another video update shortly. Let me get my composure together. Again, I can't help how long it's going to take for this video to load. Follow us on our Twitter feed. If you're on Facebook and Instagram, I'm not posting anything else on Facebook and Instagram. I would advise you to open up a Twitter account. If I'm your only follower, that's all the posts you'll see. Everything is getting ready to get dedicated to Twitter. Follow us on it. Our handle is @Dadabuh. That's DADABUH. And please see the National Hurricane Center at www.hurricanes.gov for all official watches and warnings. If anything that you've seen in your video goes against what the National Hurricane Center says, you listen to them and not me. I'm not a prophet.